I'd like to first start by thanking the City of Martinez for hosting this workshop. So with that, we're going to get started. As the title says, we've got enough to use, but none to waste. There's plenty of water in a sense, but we can't squander it. So I'm going to just jump right in. In the beginning, there was the earth, and it was good. And then came along Adam and Eve. They had a pretty good recipe. Well, it started out okay, but then it started raining and got a little wet. They continued on their little dance. And the next thing you know, their recipe worked pretty darn good. 7.2 billion of us on this planet and growing. And we're all drinking water, using water every day. And we're generating a lot of water waste and consuming that material. And as we all know, we're in the middle of one of the most severe droughts in the history of California. So it's time to conserve that material. The state of California and Governor Brown has declared a drought. So we'll just go over some of those facts just to kind of set the foundation here. First part of the year, he says, I've declared this an emergency and I'm calling all Californians to conserve water in every way possible. A few months later, on April 25th, he says, I call on every city, every community to reduce their water use by 20%. So he set a goal, a specific number for us all to achieve. Then recently, the end of last month, July 29th, the State Water Board approved regulations that went into effect that basically all Californians are expected to stop washing down their driveways and sidewalks, watering outdoor landscapes that cause excess runoff, and using a hose to wash a motor vehicle unless the hose is fitted with a shutoff nozzle, and using potable water in a fountain or decorative water feature unless the water is recirculated. So it's very specific, doable actions or practices. Locally, the Contra Costa Water District back in April has asked our local customers or residents to voluntarily conserve 15%. So it's 5% less than the state, but it's, again, a specific goal, 15%. And the city also is backing up that request by having the city council adopt a resolution for the same 15% voluntary reduction as part of their drought management program. So there we go with some of the specifics, some of the measurable goals. So let's kind of back this up. Where is our water coming from? Where do we get our water? Well, it starts with rain and snow, and the snow builds up in the Sierras, and then each spring we get the melt. The water runs down into the Great California Delta, and then early in the year, some of that water, that fresh rain or snow melt off, is diverted to the Los Vaqueros Reservoir. And that water feeds all of our local taps and faucets. So that's where the water comes from and how we store it currently. So now we know about our water. It's time for a pop quiz. You ready? So, how much water does the average single-family household in Contra Costa County use per day during the summer? And if you can understand the question, you do get a prize right off. Anybody have any idea how much water a single-family household uses during the summer? 200 gallons is the first guess? No? A little higher? 400 gallons? Still running a little bit low? 600 is the last call. No, we've exceeded it. The answer is 579 gallons per day in the peak of the summer. Like right now, we're using 579 gallons. So let's put that number into perspective as it relates to water use throughout the state and then regionally. Throughout the state, or rather in this case, did I miss one? In this case, in the state of California, on average, throughout the year, we're using 418 gallons statewide. That's a year-round average. So the summer use exceeds that. Outdoor use is the greatest consumption. We use 243 gallons a day, which is about 53% of our usage. And then indoor use is a little bit lower. 47% of our water use is indoor, and we're consuming 175 gallons. Now that's the statewide average. Fortunately, we have some data for Contra Costa County, more specific, and our number is a little bit lower than the statewide average. That's good. That number is 364 gallons per day. And it's an easy number for me to remember. It's one number shy of the number of days in the year, 365. So we use that many gallons per day, 364. Again, outdoor usage is the highest. We're using 58% outside, 42% or 153 gallons indoor. Now, you'll note in the lower right-hand corner there, winter use is lower because it's raining and less demand on our plants and irrigation, 190 gallons per day. And there's that 579 gallons per day number that was used in that quiz. That's the seasonal high. On average, though, 364 gallons. So that's the baseline. That's what we're using. So now what does that mean? What's the measurement? What it means is we need to really kind of take into our physical hands the understanding of how much water we use. 364 gallons a day equals, it's 132,860 gallons per year. Now, most of us know what a gallon looks like. I'm going to pass this around just to kind of give you a physical feeling. Imagine 132,000 of those things. It's a lot of water. Now, our 15% target is 55 gallons. What's interesting about that is today we're going to talk about rain barrels, and the common rain barrel is 55-gallon drum. So our daily goal is 55 gallons. Indoor it's 23 gallons, outdoor it's 32 gallons. These numbers are going to come into important here when I talk about how we're going to divert water from the indoors. Now here's a 55-gallon drum. That's your goal. Your daily goal is one of those drums. One of those drums diverted every day allows you to divert over 20,000 gallons a year. So that's impressive. This one diversion practice eliminates a huge amount of water. 20,000 of those gallons that you're holding in your hand right now. So here we go, another image of the drum. Every day on our 364 gallons of consumption, we consume 6.5 55-gallon drums. Imagine every single day a truck driving up and dropping off 6.5 drums of water. Okay, here you go, I'll see you tomorrow. And happening every single day. It's upwards of 2,400 of these are delivered to your home every day. So when you start to quantify this and put it into something tangible like a drum, you start to see it's a lot of water that we're consuming. So again, you see the image here at 6.5. Your goal is to take one of those out of that image right there. So let's jump in. We're going to get deeper now. We're going to get into gray water systems. What is gray water? Let's get into a very specific definition so that we satisfy the California Health and Safety Code as they describe it. So we'll just go through this. As defined by the California Health and Safety Code, it is, quote, untreated wastewater that has not been contaminated by any toilet discharge, has not been affected by infectious, contaminated, or unhealthy bodily wastes, and does not present a threat from contamination by unhelpful processing, manufacturing, or operating wastes. In a word, it's used water that's safe and it's not contaminated. And a little bit further, the code also specifies what household sources can provide gray water. And here's what's specified. Bathtubs, showers, bathroom wash basins, clothes washing machines, and laundry tubs. Any wastewater coming from kitchen sinks or dishwashers cannot be classified as gray water in California. Here is the California Plumbing Code that allows the use of gray water, and it's very specific. It says non-potable water reuse systems, basically in gray water systems. And here's the intent of this code. The California Code 16A says, the intent is to conserve water by facilitating greater reuse of laundry, shower, lavatory, and similar sources of discharge for irrigation and/or indoor use. 2, Reduce the number of non-compliant gray water systems by making legal compliance easily achievable. 3, provide guidance for avoiding potentially unhealthful conditions. And 4, provide an alternative way to relieve stress on a private sewage disposal system by diverting this water to gray water. So it's very specific. It's it's kind of legal speak, but basically it's designed to make it easy for a household to divert some gray water for alternative use. So you ready? Another pop quiz. Which water source can be part of a gray water system and not require a permit? Here are your choices. A, bathtub. B, shower. C, clothes washer. D, bathroom sink. Or F, laundry sink. And everybody is saying what letter? They're saying C. You're correct. It's a clothes washer. So a clothes washer can divert the discharge water into your gray water system without requiring a permit. So that's important to know. And let's get into some math and show the value of diverting that water from your system. We can't see it very well. But what it says here is the average household uses or has 7 loads of laundry per week. That's a load a day. And each load on average is 36 gallons. Okay? And that adds up to over 13,392 gallons per year if you do a load a day. Now, not everybody does, but these are statewide data points, and so on average, the numbers show a load per day. What that means is if you divert your gray water system, that represents 10% of your total water use. So you're getting 10%. And remember, we've asked you to conserve 15%. Or 55 gallons per day. This is where you're really getting a payback on this gray water as it relates to your washing machine, your clothes washer. If you divert that, you are now at 65% of your 15% goal. Okay? So by simply diverting just one act, that being your clothes washer, you are doing 65% of your daily goal. It means you don't have much more to do in your day. So it's pretty impressive. Just well, that number is on average, which means the question is that number, that 36 gallons per day for high-efficiency washers? That number is the statewide average, which would take into account high-efficiency and low-efficiency appliances, okay? So here is the gray water systems language as specified in the gray water code. It says, clothes washing machines that do not alter the existing plumbing do not require a permit as long as these guidelines are followed. So you don't need a permit as long as you follow these rules. There's these do's and don't rules. So what you must do is you must have a valve to direct the flow between the sewer septic and a gray water system. Okay, you must have a valve to divert it either to the sewer or outside. You must have that valve or your gray water system labeled. The water you're sending, you must send the water to an irrigation system or discharge field outside. You must keep the water on the same property where the water is being generated. You can't let it go somewhere else other than your own property or that property. You must have a maintenance manual. Now that sounds scary, but a maintenance manual could be as simple as, remember you're going on vacation, you leave somebody a note on what to do, turn the lights off, lock the door, feed the cat. It's a simple thing as like how the valve works, where and how you can clean the system. So it can be a one-page document that you pin up on the wall where your system is designed. We'll have some images of that shortly. And lastly, the discharge gray water must be under a 2-water cover of ground mulch. In other words, you trench it, you can have plastic shields or stones, and we're going to get into that. So again, lastly, the discharge gray water must be under a 2-inch cover of mulch, and you can have a plastic shield or stones. And we'll get into that in great detail. We've got some good images. What you cannot do, this is what you cannot do. You cannot use gray water or water from your wash machine used to clean diapers, dirty diaper water. So no fecal matter in the water. The water cannot contain hazardous chemicals, such as from a home photo lab. You cannot have pooling of the gray water, and it can't run off. So it can't just sit there, openly exposed, pooled, and it can't run off to adjacent properties. The gray water has to be accessible to people. It must not be accessible to people or pets. So it can't be in an open system or tub. It also cannot include a pump except for the pump that's in the washing machine. It cannot be connected to a potable water supply, and it cannot affect other parts of the building, such as the electrical or structural components. These all make good sense to me, okay? Here's the fine print. This is the actual code. So to make it easier, we can zoom. Okay, we're going to take a minute. You guys are going to read that? No, you're not. This is really just for legal purposes so that if you need to read this, when we post this publicly, you can read the fine print. Okay? For these systems that are using the clothes washer or the laundry, it's commonly called laundry to landscape. You can see there's a very simple image depicting how it works. You've got your clothes washer, you've got your levered system behind your washer, and then some plumbing to the outside and disbursement to different shrubs, trees, and plants. So a very simple diagram of how the system works. And so we're going to get, kind of like peeling an onion here, we're going to get deeper and deeper into this. But overall, as long as you understand, it's pretty simple. You're taking the discharge water and you're dispersing it outside as long as you're not pooling the water. So it's pretty easy. So parts and pieces. What are the components of a typical gray water system? It's pretty simple. It always has a three-way valve. This valve allows you to control the water either into your typical sewer discharge or to turn the lever and discharge it outside into your disbursement field. So it has to have a three-way valve. It has to have an anti-siphon valve. So in addition to the siphon system, you have to have some pipes and plumbing to take that water from the back of your clothes washer, I keep saying that, from the back of your clothes washer and discharge it to your outside. So here's a close-up of a typical system. You can see on the left there a three-way valve. Normally the plumbing that comes out of the back of your washing machine is now connected or coupled to that three-way valve. You can then see the water goes to the left to your discharge into the wall, into the sewer system, or to the right where you see that valve, that anti-siphon valve up on the top there, and then it's being diverted outside. So it's a very simple system. And here is a kit that's available. No plugs here, but there are companies out there. This particular kit is sold for just about $100. They have several other kits that have more plumbing supplies with it. And if you Google gray water systems, you'll find these systems available. If you're kind of a do-it-yourselfer, you can certainly build a system for well under $100. The most expensive component in your system is that three-way valve. It can be anywhere from $15 to $40 depending on what it's made of and who you're buying it from. There is your close-up of the three-way valve, which again, you have water coming in from your washing machine, and then you're diverting it either back to your sewer typically or off to your gray water system. There's a close-up of that in-valve vent or anti-siphon. That's important. It's required. You must have that device in there. And here's a close-up. This particular system, unlike the other image, has the anti-siphon plumbed on the outside. Doesn't matter where you have that as long as it's above the highest point on your discharge system and it works properly. So again, this can be sited indoor or out, and they felt for whatever reason it's easy for them to get to that valve right there. If for some reason it clogged up, they can get to it readily. Here's another close-up of the valve. And remember, one of the requirements was to have a maintenance and a maintenance guide and proper labeling. It doesn't have to be fancy. You notice in that kit they had a professionally made sticker. You don't have to have that. Obviously, just some painter's blue tape here and a black marker saying here, in this case, they must have a bamboo garden. So they're discharging their water off to the bamboo, or if for some reason they wanted to divert it back to their sewer system, they just turn it to the left and the water goes back on your normal system there. This is a very important thing to pay attention to. Two things for just the safety and the ongoing maintenance of your system. Number one, you want to anchor your system. As you know, when the machine is operating, sometimes the wall or the floor vibrates. If at some point the plumbing came apart, you'd have a real mess in your house. You don't want to damage your building there. So you want to always anchor the system to the wall. And what you do is you take a small block, you mount that block to the stud, and then you mount the system to that stud. So it's very simple, not very, not overly sophisticated here. So you mount the system to the wall, and then the one place that requires a clamp is where the hose coming out of the clothes washer couples into the three-way valve. You've got to put a clamp there, because there's some pressure coming out from the pump into that three-way valve. If that thing ever blew off, you'd have a real problem there. So that's the one spot you want to couple. Everything else can be either glued or friction fitted, but right there where it comes in from the machine, you want to have a hose clamp in there. All right? This shows, now that you've made your system on the inside, you now need to plumb it to the outside. So they brought the pipe outside to the backyard or side yard. Now, an important thing to be aware of, specified in the requirements, when you're drilling holes, you just don't go willy-nilly. You want to make sure you're not hitting a structural support, that you're not hitting any pipes or plumbing, and you're not hitting anything electrical. So you need to be careful with that. You might do some pilot holes or get somebody that knows what they're doing to start putting a hole in your building. Another tip is when you are ready to drill that hole, don't just drill straight through from one side to the other. Drill from both sides. So go outside, start that hole on the outside, go in, then go back inside and start the hole on the opposite side and drill in. If you just drill from one side all the way through, when you get to the opposite side, it's going to kind of blow out and you'll have a sloppy, messy hole. So you'll blow up your drywall or blow up your stucco there. So you want to kind of make sure you do a clean hole right there. And as you can see, they've got their PVC pipe there ready to go and couple in there. Another important fact, you always want to make sure all your plumbing is 1 inch or greater. Anything less than that, you stand a chance of it clogging up with any debris coming out of your gray water from your clothes washer. So having a 1 inch plumbing system is sufficient for ongoing operation. So that's important. So once you've made your levered system on the inside of your house and you've plumbed it outside your wall, now it's time to get outside and start laying the line, laying the plumbing or the piping for outside. So here you can see this particular system is doing the same thing. They've got their inline vent outside. For whatever reason, they're preferring to do it that way. And then you see it's teeing off, going out to what we call some discharge points, or some discharge or drip points within your field of disbursement, and we'll talk about that as we go in. Now, this particular image technically doesn't satisfy the requirements, which are you must put your pipes under 2 inches, bury it 2 inches, but I selected this so you can see how it's done. You see the inch pipe coming out, and then you see a lateral going out to a discharge point within your water system, and I'll get into that further. But so you run your main line, and then you have laterals coming off your 1 inch line throughout your property. Okay, so now this particular installation, they've trenched around, and now they're covering up their inch lines. So it's not that sophisticated. You make your plan, you drop your line, and you get it. Here's another one. You can see to the lower right, they're coming off the wall, and they've junctioned it down to the ground. You can see they've trenched it a good, looks like 20, 25 feet, ready to go. They can have laterals, as many as they want, coming off that line, and then they'll cover that up. Okay, so it takes a little bit of work up front. This system here, you can see they've already buried their lines, and they've chosen to use mulch to cover the material instead of some of these plastic shields. The plastic shields allow you to identify where your discharge points are. So this is my preferred approach. So you could have several of these throughout your property. All right, so wherever those discharge points are, you're able to go and periodically, you can just lift up the cover and make sure that when the system's running water, that water is coming out of those release points. Here's another example. Again, it's teed into that plastic shield area, and it's covered up, and you just lift that cover to take a look. Here's a commercial valve chamber here. You can see on the bottom right there, the pipe's coming in there. It's a little damp in the bottom of that well there, so you can see that it's open and flowing. Here is a nice, handsome, completed installation. They've laid the pipe, they've covered it up, and you can see the access point right there. That you could have several of those throughout your property. This one here, a little more simple than the commercial. They've got looks like she's using a piece of terracotta to cover up her excess port right there. She can go in and periodically just inspect it to make sure that there's no blockage or plumbing. Another thing, you never want to block any of your discharge points. It's always a completely open system. If that were to be blocked up, it would back up into your house and cause some serious water damage. So those are some examples of the shields. This particular one, the resolution of this image is very low, but it's a very interesting design. You can see what's going on here. They've got their 1-inch pipe coming into just a typical 5-gallon bucket. And then from that bucket, they put out kind of a star system, some smaller, probably 1/2-inch, 3/4-inch pipes in 6 points. And then if you note, it's in a round trench. And at the end of each of those 6 laterals, it looks like they're digging a hole for a tree or a shrub. And at the tip of those laterals, you can't see it in this image from here, but there's some chicken wire in there, so they can keep the discharge point or the flow point open. Once they've installed that star disbursement system, they'll cover all that up with the exception of the top of that barrel, and they'll be able to discharge to 6 points all at once. So that's a pretty clever system. Here's a top view of that. So again, it's reuse. It's real simple. Just an 1-inch+ pipe going into a 5-gallon bucket. As that fills up, the water drains off to those 6 discharge points. So a very clever way of dispersing water. Shield systems you saw in those earlier images, different types or different shapes. So here these are commercial valve covers. You've seen these all around in standard irrigation systems. Here's an open top rectangular. If you're wanting to have a large disbursement field, here's a conical one you can see to the lower left, just an open hole. This image right here shows you kind of a cutaway engineering view of it, how this works. So you can plumb that in the ground, and then it's got the removable lid so you can have access to your drip points there. I like this one, it's my favorite, because it's simply a flower pot. And a lot of us save these pots, so this is an opportunity for reuse. So a simple green one or a black one, what you'd want to do is take some sort of knife or whatever, and you would cut, in this case, the bottom. You could maybe cut 3/4 of it off to make a flap. If you remember on some of those other images, you saw it kind of flapping back. They're reusing a flower pot here, so you would cut that and you would flip this upside down. So the top would be the bottom, and then that flap would just stay on, and you just bury that into your system. So it's cheap, maybe it's free. You've got 1 or 5 of these laying around. So it's a great way to make your little plastic shields. So now that you've got your system installed, you want to pay attention to the water and your cleaning solutions. So you don't just use any old soap and water. You want to make sure that you don't harm or kill your plants with certain soaps. So we'll walk through this. So you want to choose plant-friendly products are key when using a gray water system. So you need to go out and read the labels and replace perhaps what you're currently using. All the products should be biodegradable and non-toxic. That kind of seems obvious. This is the important part. They should be free of salts or sodium and boron or the brand borax. Okay, so no salts and no boron. 2 common ingredients which are non-toxic to people but are harmful to plants and to the soil. So you just want to read the labels, no salts and no borons. If you use any kind of chlorine or bleach cleaners, those are harmful to plants, and they should be diverted back to your sewer system away from your gray water system, because or any other, what does it say? Let me read this. Chlorine bleach is also harmful to plants and should be diverted with any other harmful products to the sewer or septic by switching the 3-way valve. So if you're going to use that, then you just need to be aware of it, throw the valve back to the sewer system, and go ahead and use your more toxic or chemical-based cleaning products. Hydrogen peroxide bleaches are less harmful. You may want to do your research on that, and can be used instead of chlorine. So there's some more alternative cleaners out there. So you want to pay attention to that. So even further, another consideration when using cleaning and beauty products is their effect on the pH of the water. Most soaps do not change the pH, but some do, so you need to get kind of into the science of your soaps. In general, liquid soaps do not change the pH, while bar soaps make the water very basic, as as opposed to acidic. So in that case, because we're not using, let's say, water from the shower or tub, we don't really need to worry about that. But if in some way in your clothes washing system you're using some bar soap, you may need to attend to the acidity of that. Certain acid-loving plants may not be happy with this kind of basic water, so you need to just be aware of that. Talk to a nursery person or discharge the water to the appropriate plants. So you get into some gardening decisions. And if you're not sure if the pH is affecting, choose plants that are not acid-loving. So you may need to replace some plants, or as I said, choose where you're dispersing this water. So those are some critical things. So it's really important to pay attention to the soaps that you're going to use when you put in one of these systems. So here we have some brands to choose from. We're not condoning any of these. And you can easily find these brands by just typing in gray water system soaps. In closing on this, here's some images of a very mature system. You can see all the plants are thriving, and you can see all those access points in the covers. And then this one is even more so. You don't even see they've camoed out. Maybe they've buried their discharge points within their gray water garden. So I'd like to stop now and take any questions that you've had relative to the gray water systems. Yes? Are there any restrictions on the use of gray water use on edible landscaping? No, there are not. That's why this particular water, and the definition of gray water, they specifically picked several appliances or places in your home where gray water comes from. And as we mentioned, they've excluded the kitchen water, basically, and dishwashing systems because of potential biota in that water. The other water, once it's filtered out through the soil, has no harm to you or your plants. The question or the comment is he's heard that gray water turns into black water if stored for longer than 1 day. And that's true because, and that's one of the primary criteria, is that the water cannot pool or stand or be in any sort of a tub, that it has to discharge immediately into your property to avoid that whole biological condition. It will go from an aerobic situation to an anaerobic condition, which is unhealthy. So that's true. The comment is from somebody that has a gray water system that for ease of installation or design, that the temptation is to have your discharge points close to the home or property walls, and that's not advisable because you have long on-term water potential or potentially ongoing water damage to your foundation. Yes, it's safe. It wouldn't be permitted. The codes and standards are designed and set in such a way that it's for your safety. So if you recall, there was lots of words of healthy, all these things in the language itself. The code specifically takes those concerns into account. So yes, it's safe to use that water because it's going through the ground, it's percolating through the ground into the soil, and then the root system's taking it up. It's not like anything that might be bad in the water is jumping into the air into your plants. So it's able to percolate through the groundwater or through the ground and be absorbed. So yes, it's safe because it's not standing and becoming unhealthy. All right, well, let's continue. Let's focus on rain barrel systems. Let's start with a pop quiz. You guys ready for this? All right. What percentage of total water used does the average single-family household use outdoors? And a hint, you already have been exposed to the answer. Here are your choices: 42%, 63%, 58%, 76%, or 33%. 58. The answer is 58%. You guys are smart. That's right. 58% of the water we use is used outdoors. So there's a great opportunity, and taking advantage of rainwater can help offset that use outside. So let's talk about rain barrel systems. There are many ways of doing it, and as I prepared for this presentation, I was just amazed at the different kind of flavors, shapes, sizes, and colors available in terms of how one can make a rain barrel. And so my original intent was to bring in the classic famous blue 55-gallon drum. And I realized, well, that's just one way of doing it. And I didn't want you to fixate on that's the only way to do it. Because really, as you'll see, the basic elements or components are very simple. And what you do from there is up to you. Here are your basic elements. Of course, you need a barrel or some large container. You need to pipe the gutter system into that barrel. And of course, you need a spigot to dispense the water. And then you need some form of an overflow device or mechanism. So it's you know, you need a container, you need to capture the water, and you need to dispense it, and you need to make sure it doesn't overflow, or if it does, you can release that water. So here's just a very simple example of what I'm talking about. Literally, they've dropped the gutter rail into that drum. On the lower left, you can see the spigot right there. Simple overflow system. It's as basic as it gets. So, you know, if you understand that concept, you're already into it. So, let's get into some of the hardware. I've got some examples of that here. But what I liked about this particular system, it was very affordable. It was under $25. I think that was a special, so it's about a $30 system. And it came with all your basic components. Now, some of the elements, particularly that pipe there, it's kind of cheap. So it's going to wear out or may not be long enough for general use. But it's a starter kit. And it has, up on the top, you'll see it's got the hole cutter, the hole saw right there. That's really helpful. If you don't own that, it comes in the kit. It's got your basic elements, the spigot, your overflow elements, etc. And all those items are here. You can take a look after the presentation. Here's another kit by another company. It's got a little more sophisticated diversion tool here, that white gizmo, that white device right here. Taps into your downspout on your gutter system, and it diverts water away from your gutter into your drum containment system. This particular one has a spade bit saw, a hole cutter right there. You'll see that in the lower left corner there. Instead of the hole saw, it's got a spade bit. So same thing, only different. It's got some labeling in there, so you don't drink it. That's important. And all your basic components. So that same brand here, you see they've tied it into your downspout from your rain gutter system, and then you divert it over to your barrel, as I said earlier. There are many different brands out there, shapes and sizes, price range. These are anywhere from a couple of dollars on up. This particular brand is the same brand as that inline vent that we looked at earlier. So there's another way. Here's yet another system, very simple, just ties right in, and the pipe comes right off. This one here has an interesting screen in there to help keep any debris, particularly leaves or branches that accumulate throughout the year in your gutter system. Helps to divert that, and there's a little access gate on the top of that diverter so that you can reach in and clean out that screen. And then, of course, the coupling, the couplers on the lower right there, or lower left rather, to tie into your downspout. This one, interesting, kind of a Y here up at the top. You'll see this little lever here, so you can switch it back and forth. If for some reason you only have one or a few containers and they're full and you no longer wish to capture water, you simply throw the lever and divert the water back to your original gutter output. So that one's your more standard rectangular shape. Here's a more exploded view. You could see how you could put in extra elbows in there. You see how that works, pretty straightforward. One's going to go off to your container, your barrel, and the other's going to go down to your typical disbursement. Same thing, only different. This one's round versus a rectangular. Again, it's got that lever switch on the top there to divert the water back and forth. I think maybe if you keep it in the middle, it kind of goes 50-50. Depends on how the baffle is. This one's a plastic version. Again, it's designed for round pipe. Looks like they've got some sort of an access panel there that you can pop open. If any debris collects in that little pocket, you flip that door open and you can remove any of the leaves and branches that would accumulate in that little reservoir. This particular close-up is for the kit that we have here in-house. On the left there, you've got the hole cut out, and then you put this little rubber gizmo into that hole. What you do is, this is flexible. It goes into that hole that you cut, so you force it in the hole, you mount it with 2 nuts or bolts, and then you tie in with your hose, your piping right here. So it's pretty straightforward. And you want this to be up. so that the water comes in and goes around. There it is, an image of using your simple hole saw. So you target your hole point and you get in there and you put the hole in there. And then, as I said, you insert that diverter piece, that rubber diverter, into your hole and mount it. This one, when I was gathering images for the presentation, was very interesting. It's crazy. Somebody took some 2-liter soda pop bottles and strung them all together to make a pipe. So there's a never-ending opportunity for reuse. So that's just a real simple system. If it cracks and gets old, time to go drink some more sparkling water or whatever, okay? So now here, we call this making connections. Different ways to plumb in or connect to your barrel of choice. Right there, again, your classic blue drum. This here is a flexible diverter pipe that you can tie into. It's expandable. See if I can do that. So you see it's expandable. It ties into the top of that drum, and then you do a coupler off into your... Did you get that? So we'll do that. So this is expandable. You can expand it out, and it's mobile, and you just tap into your existing gutter system. That particular piece was about $2 or $3. Very affordable. Certainly they have different shapes and sizes depending on the type of gutter system that your house has. On this particular system, this is a do-it-yourself. You go out and you get one of these. This, again, it's like $3 or $4 for this. So you take a hole saw or some sort of a jigsaw. You cut out the diameter smaller than this. You drop it in. You drop it into the top of your barrel, and then you can maybe squeeze this in to get into that system. So very simple. And there it is, coupling your drain spout or your diverted drain into the top of the drum. So it's very low tech, using gravity to feed the water. And here I've got several images of different spigots. In the kit that I purchased to demonstrate today, they've got a simple plastic spigot. That one obviously is brass. This is threaded to mount into the side of your drum. Here's another one. It's got a nice mated fitting or coupling right there. Same thing, they chose to kind of put it in there and maybe use some liquid sealant there. Okay, so there's different ways. So you can go in there with a coupling system with a rubber gasket, or you can mount it in there and glue it with some sort of strong cement. Here's another one that's more of a gate or like a ball valve in there, another coupling. So there's all kinds. So it just depends on your budget or what you have in your hardware drawer or at the hardware store. This is more typical to a hose system, very simple. It's got a little control to gate the water off there. Now, take into consideration where you put your spigot, because on some spigots, they shoot down. So if the thread for your hose is facing down, and that's close to the ground, it's hard to get your hose in there. So in this configuration, it's coming out, so it allows you to couple the water hose easier than fighting it, or you have to put it over a lip. So where you sight it and the angle of your spigot there is important. Here's another one, real simple, in use. There we go. We're now moving into how to prepare your barrel for your overflow. So again, using a hole saw or a spade bit, same thing, cut your hole. You want to get your measurement right. And then if you have a system like this, where they're choosing to have that screen on the top, you can reach in and mount your overflow valve in that way. But in some systems, they don't go that way. They'll plumb in. You see the white threaded openings on the top of the barrel. Some designs, you drill a hole into that white plug, and so you don't have the luxury of getting your hand inside. So you have to kind of get artful on how you put your overflow valve in your system. Now, that also brings me to state, I prefer barrels that have removable sealable tops, because then you can easily just take the top in, and then you can mount any of your hardware from the inside out and get nice tight fittings, and you're done, no leaking. It's easy to do. So as I said, going into this, there are many different barrels to choose from and many different ways to configure or build your barrel. This goes on to what I'm saying. Here's an open top, kind of like an olive barrel. They've gone in there. I guess they really want to make sure that overflow is going to work well. They've got about a 4.5-inch hole there, and they're never going to clog that hole up. But obviously, you can get in the top. That's my main point of this image, is that you can get in from the top and mount your hardware. So speaking of hardware, this is a classic, threaded and friction nipple that you can mount on as an overflow device. You can mount the threads onto the drum, and then you can use the friction nipple there to put on a hose as part of your overflow. Again, there's many different ways to do this. Here they've mounted it. It looks like they might have used a little glue or whatever. Simple, gas fittings here. Another one, this person's got a real big opening and using a hose clamp and large hose. Another configuration on overflow. So you get the point. There's many ways of doing it. It could be as easy as just poking a hole in it and letting it weep right there, but it's probably better to have some sort of an overflow pipe configured in that system. And to do that, you want to have tools. A jigsaw is common, or it can be as simple as a keyhole saw, where you just get in there, and to make those larger holes, you just get in there and maybe use a drill for a pilot hole and just cut out a simple hole. So it can be low tech, no power, just your own manual labor there. So then, barrels of fun. This really was fun, gathering images of all the different types of barrels that are out there. This one here, it's easily to recognize. It's a garbage can. The downside of the garbage can is twofold. Its capacity is lower than a 55-gallon drum, and the whole idea is to capture a lot of water. And in a big storm, you can easily you can fill this up in minutes. And they tend to be expensive. A 34-gallon garbage can be $50, and I can get a barrel for 20. So, and with more capacity. There are different types of containers. You can see what they've done here. They're using simple gate valves, and they've cut a hole in the top. I like this just because it was a really good image, and I'll zoom in a little bit. You can see they've used a piece of an old hose or a new hose, and they've plumbed it in there, and then on the side here, they've strapped it in with some like conduit straps, and so they've just kind of nailed it down. Just a simple configuration. Very doable, very easy to do, and inexpensive. Again, classic, the blue drum. We've seen that. You've got your simple overflow on the left and your spigot. I don't know why they put the spigot so high. I guess they don't want the last 8 gallons, but whatever. But I guess wisdom on that would be if your delivery system, your gutter system to that barrel contained some debris at the beginning of the season, and all the sinking debris would go to the bottom, and when you ran your spigot, you wouldn't suck up the debris. Here, another barrel. There's all kinds of barrels out there. Now, remember I was talking about paying attention to the way your spigot is designed. If you put this down on the lower edge, then that threaded fitting would be pointing at a weird angle. So depending on the barrel you select or have, you want to pay attention to the type of spigot that you're considering installing and how it's going to really play in terms of your hose fitting there. So that's probably one of the bigger bits of advice. Again, here's another system. You can see they've got your coupling device right here on the downspout, and then they run it over. I don't know how I don't know how it switches in here, but there are many different types of these products in the marketplace, so you want to shop around carefully for that. Again, this is a pretty handsome system. I'll say it later, but you want to be cautious of using opaque containers, because over time, any of the organic matter is going to allow algae to grow in that system. And so a black or dark colored barrel will minimize or negate the development of algae inside. Over time, this will get algae buildup. It looks handsome, it's all color coordinated, but it will have some problems moving on. Again, different barrels. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. This was interesting, really low tech, just a simple plastic sleeve. You can buy these in your gutter supply section, but you don't want to leave standing water like that. So it's very low tech, but very affordable. Here, I don't really necessarily support this because I'm into reuse, so I like the idea of going out and rescuing or buying a secondhand food grade barrel. That's another point I need to make. They need to be food grade. But this is certainly going to be, it's very handsome, but it's probably, so is the price. It's probably pretty expensive. but some people want that, so that's okay. Now we're going big time here. Big time. I don't know what the capacity is of that. It's probably several hundred gallons, maybe 300-gallon tank. It's huge. Here's the good part about this one, it's black. Same thing, only different, except for it's at opaque and over time. Now one could paint that, and that would actually camo it out a lot more in this garden setting. So you could use just a little bit of paint and just paint in the squares. Now, if you get serious, you can realize, back to the math up front, our daily goal is 55 gallons. So with one barrel, you're only killing one day. You have 364 more to go. So the more barrels you have, the more water you're going to divert. So we're going to have several images of dual or multi-systems. So you can see what they've done. They've elevated the first into the second to collect 110 gallons. They're getting even more serious. A multiple system there, elevated a little bit on the side of a helm. Again, using the terrace system, the one on the far right looks like a commercial versus some homemade versions on the left there. This guy is really interesting. I stare at this a lot, trying to figure out, you know, I think it's one of my favorite, but he likes pipes. The spigot looks like it's right over here. So it fills up to the top, and then I guess once it's full, this is some sort of overflow system into an open gravity discharge tube right there. Here, popular in Sonoma County or Napa County, the reuse of a wine barrel. Even Solano County would use one of these, okay? So it's handsome. Again, they're putting the spigot up high, but and that's the system that we showed you earlier. So they just tie into the downspout, and then they've got a simple overflow on the right side there. Getting a little more artistic, a little camouflage there, real handsome. All the way down to the turtles on the stones, so that's kind of a nice system. Even more so, like getting kind of tropical here, or getting into the marshlands. I like that one. So we're getting a little whimsy here. For those of you that like ladybugs or rainbows, we've got all kinds of colors. We're getting this one's great, so fish in the barrel. Another seahorse coming up on my favorites. This is one of my all-time. Look at this, and what do they say? When it rains, it stores. When it rains, it stores. Isn't that brilliant? And for you science fiction geeks in the audience, R2-D2. That's my favorite. I have to say, I can't get over that one. So there are all kinds of ways to build and design a bin. You can make them as simple as just screaming blue, or get artistic with paint and color. Now, overflowing considerations. You can see that when it rains, it can really come down fast. Maybe the barrel was full before the storm. Maybe it wasn't full and it just filled up and their overflow device doesn't work. It looks like they've got a kink in the hose maybe right here. So you need to plan for this, and if you only have one barrel and it's a big storm, you need to open your gate valve and let the water go. Because it's best to get that water away from your property, away from fences and foundations. So there's one vision. And here's another one. You can see it just comes out fast. It's just totally overflowing. So again, I'm not sure why this is happening. Is it, is the gate valve closed? Is this, maybe it's coming down faster than this discharge allows. I mean, it looks like it's coming down a lot faster than that 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch line. Make sure your gutters and drains are clear. Okay, that's, we're supposed to do that, but that's important. And that keeps debris out of your system. Maybe your roof area is so large and you're trying to capture more gallons than your system is designed for. As I said, you might want to empty your barrel before the rainstorm and then add a hose to the spigot and open it during the rain. So I'm just kind of repeating some of those points. But you just need to be a little wise when the rainstorms come on. Now this I discovered, and it's brilliant. Okay, so you didn't clean your rain gutter. Life got in the way of cleaning the rain gutter. Who wants to get up there anyhow? So the way this system, it's brilliant. Right here on the left, when it rains, the water goes down, and it's capped right here. That first water is going to carry the gravel and the leaves down this tube. So you got your debris in this tube. It will fill up with water, and once it gets over, the cleaner water will then start dumping into your system. Later on, you can open this up. It'll evacuate that tube. All the crud will blow out. You cap it, and it's ready for another dirty load to come through. Real simple, low tech. I've seen some images, and if you go looking online, you'll find some images. They have clear pipes in here. They put a ball in there, so you can see when the ball comes up, and maybe the ball gets in here. It's really, they've gotten kind of interesting. So people have patents on these designs, but you could go as simple as that, just a basic tube with a threaded end cap on there, and it fills up and discharges into your barrel. I think that's one of your wisest ways of doing that, and it keeps the debris out of the barrel. Okay, some safety tips. We have to go over safety here. This is not how to do it. Okay, pay attention. This is not how to do it. I'm not trying to give you an image of ways to do it. This is not how to do it. So, why? You don't want animals or children to fall in there. Sounds a little silly, but kids are curious. Last thing you want is a little kid to fall in there. They would not get out of that barrel. It's bad, okay?
Breed mosquitoes.
So you want to keep your barrel closed. Second point here, keep the barrel covered and place screens and openings to prevent mosquitoes. That image right there, mosquitoes are having a heyday in that thing. So not only do you not want that open like that, but on those other designs we showed you where you cut a hole, you want to put in some screen in there. So even though you've got a screen in there to capture the leaves, you want a finer mesh to keep the mosquitoes from getting inside there. So even though you can't see inside, they'll get through something like this easily. They'll get through that, no problem. They'll be the inside of your barrel making all kinds of mosquitoes. So you want to be careful. So you want to put in a piece of window screen or screen door screen in that system. Or you could even take a piece of hosing, leggings, and put that around your downspout into that screen area. But then you'd have to make sure to clean that routinely because the leaves would capture there. So it goes back to that other design. So you want to keep your barrel covered and place screens on all openings. A full barrel weighs at least 400 to 430 pounds. The weight of the barrel plus 55 gallons of water. We talked about the weight of water. If that thing falls over, you can break something or you can hurt yourself. And I talked about this earlier, using a dark barrel to minimize algae growth. So those are just some important, obviously the algae is not a safety issue, it's just more of a maintenance issue. So you may wish to elevate your drum. There are commercially made stands, or you can get handy and make your own. Just like the styles and types of barrels, there are many ways to do the stand. You can use 2x4s and 4x4s. You can see they wanted that one elevated. Looks like they've got some sort of a water line there that they plumb into their drum. And then you can go basic blocks or cinder blocks or cinder bricks and such, something like that. But again, here you want to be careful that that thing is not going to topple over. You know, if the water saturates the ground here and it gets soft, that thing could list to one side and fall over. So you might want to strap that down or just make sure it's really on secure ground. Okay, so saving water for our future. Here's just kind of some closing imagery of a really handsome garden. You can see what they've done. They've diverted water into the rain barrel, and they're using that water right into their raised beds there. And then, of course, we're always thinking of our children and grandchildren, and you can see she's learning how to water her garden using rainwater. And, of course, Martinez loves to save water. So a little plug for Martinez. So I want to mention here, we've got, at the end of this presentation, some 3 different slides of sources and links. Here, these links are to general information on water conservation, just basic practices for indoor and outdoor water savings. This next is on gray water systems. So we've got some fact sheets. So if you want to look at the regulations and code on gray water systems, you can go to these links. Of course, you can Google gray water kits. I didn't want to plug anyone, and there's many of them out there. And then on the rain barrel systems, I did plug one, this rainwater saver. They had some good stuff. Do it yourself. Has a good visual kind of pictorial on how to make a 15, and then there's $15 rain barrels. So there's different sources out there. Again, the internet is a great way to find those. Well, thank you all for coming out and being patient with the production here. Thank you.